Welcome to this virtual forum looking ahead Creation Care 2023. And we want to begin by praying the Renew Our World prayer. Let's close our eyes and pray together. Lord, renew our spirits and cleanse our hearts. Renew our minds and transform our lives. Renew our cities and rebuild our ruins. Renew our world. In your name we pray. Amen. And I'm delighted to begin now with our first speaker and to hand over to Paul. Paul's with Tearfund, and Paul has collected many important points that give us a good idea of the overarching challenges that we see in especially two different fields of environmental care or creation care. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matthias. It's great to be here with you, and thanks for putting the slides together at very short notice. I really appreciate it. Great to see so many colleagues from around the world. Many of you met with and worked with before, and look forward to this discussion. So as Matthias said, I'm Paul from Tearfund in the UK. So Tearfund, I'm sure many of you will know, is a Christian relief and development organisation working in over 50 countries across Africa, Asia, Latin America. And one of our real focus areas is on the impact of changing climate and changing environment on those who are living in the poorest communities around the world. So just to, I'm going to go quickly, and there'll be other speakers who can obviously contribute or agree, disagree, and build on things I'm sharing. But Matthias, if you mind just clicking on the first slide. So just a reminder, so for Tearfund, we're very engaged with the UN climate change negotiations. I'm sure many of you will know we had in 2015 the Paris Agreement, where the world agreed to keep global average temperature rise below 1.5 degrees and to get to net zero emissions by 2050. And basically, the governments of the world have been meeting every year since to kind of figure out the way they're going to do that and get there. So we had the COP meetings, as they're called, in November, December each year. The last one, the end of last year in Egypt. Some of you were there, I know. Again, this may be controversial, others may disagree, but I would say actually it was quite a difficult year last year, so we didn't get a lot of progress at all in the Egypt COP. There was a really key agreement on loss and damage, so this is compensating very developing countries for the loss and damage that's been caused as a result of climate change. So an agreement to the principle that a fund should be set up to support countries who are already experiencing the impact of climate change to compensate for that. But there's no money being agreed in that. And we know other funds that have been committed in the past, it's taken years and decades for any sort of money to be agreed and flowing. So important that the principle's acknowledged, but there's a long way off having real serious flows of money to help those who desperately need it. But apart from that, very little progress on other things compared with Glasgow the year previously, which was not perfect by any means, but we got some more progress on other issues. I think it's been aware last year and going into this year that there's quite a strong fossil fuel lobby, in particular in these two COPs in Egypt and United Arab Emirates in particular. I mean, it's always been there in the fringes, but I think these last couple of years we've seen it even stronger. And one of the ways we see that is in the appointment of the head of the state-owned oil company in Dubai to lead the COP. So it may seem like a massive conflict of interest to have somebody who's leading that, running this COP on climate change. So a hugely controversial decision there. There's been lots of challenge from around the world on that. So we have the COP at the end of the year, November and 30th November to 12th December in Dubai. So yeah, lots of progress needed there, lots of focus on getting the agreements we need to cut fossil fuel emissions in order to keep below 1.5 degrees. So that's going to be a big focus for Tearfund and for many organizations around the world. In the run-up to that, we have in September, the UN Secretary General is convening a Climate Ambition Summit. So he's done it before, and I think the aim is to really, whilst the world leaders are at the UN General Assembly, to really try and leverage pressure on them to get high commitments coming from them and use that to then drive that progress into the COP negotiations in November, December. And around the same time, there's also the SDG Summit, Sustainable Development Goals Summit. So we're now this year, unbelievably, halfway through the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is maybe another key moment where the world will have a chance to pause and see how we're doing on those Sustainable Development Goals. So something of the climate politics for the year. Matthias, if you don't mind clicking on. Alongside this, there's also a UN plastics negotiations going on this year. The lovely, catchy technical title of Sessions of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to Develop an Internationally Legally Binding Instrument on Plastic Pollution, in language that only the UN can do. But this is an international negotiation that's going on. It began last year, and it's going to run through 2023 and into 2024 to tackle the issue of waste plastics around the world. There's been some good progress already, but we're hoping there should be good results on that going through this year and into next year. So that's a parallel process that's running. And the key meetings for those are in May and November, December again. And just the final slide from me. Thanks, Matthias. So for Tearfund's plans, so from the 1st of March on the second of those two processes, we'll have a big major international campaign launching, focusing on the rubbish campaign. So looking at this issue of the plastic negotiations. So really there, we're calling for reductions in plastic and switching to alternatives. We're calling for much better reuse, recycling, and also for a lot more transparency and various other things. And crucially for us as well, really making sure that waste pickers who are so the poorest of the poor, caught up in this process of waste, and whose work is caught up in this whole process of what happens with plastic and plastic waste, that they will be a key part of that process and those negotiations, so we'll be able to bring them into that. And then we'll continue to do climate campaigning around the COPs and the UN negotiations as well. So hopefully that's a useful contribution, and looking forward to getting into the discussions.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that overview. I think that's very helpful. We directly take it to Chris, my colleague, and also co-director of the World Evangelical Alliance Sustainability Center. Chris, over to you.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here. I am coming from San Diego, California, and I've just got a slide here which just has a few things. It's a long year of high points and moments, global moments. I touch on a few global moments that others probably add to, but some of these global moments I'm pointing out because the WEA team will turn up at them, and I want everybody here to know about these global moments. The first is I want to highlight is the UN Water Summit, which is in March. And the thing about the UN and what it can do for us as a movement, it can focus us at particular times. I know it's focused us most recently on biodiversity with COP15, and we came together as a community to focus on those issues. We do that every year for climate. And another big moment is this UN Water Summit. So again, it will help us to focus. What are the issues? What are the concerns? And what are we doing? And help us to work together to act. So I point that out. We'll be turning up, be in contact with us if you want to bring some of the things that you're doing to our attention that we can, because we're at the table when we go to these, so we can bring these into the conversation. So be in contact with us if we can, to know what you're doing and the issues that you want us to speak on. The second global moment, which is probably not on a lot of people's radar, but it's the UN Habitat Assembly. So this year, the UN focuses on a SDG, and one of the SDGs that they're focusing on is SDG 11, which is on cities. So UN Habitat, which is the agency responsible for getting the global community to focus on cities, will be handling the assessment of how far we are in progress towards the goals of SDG 11. That will happen at the UN Habitat Assembly, and we will be there in June. A couple of things I want to say about this. We've been working with UN Habitat in this area of cities and sustainability since 2013. At Habitat 3, we turned up, and then we'll be doing we'll be going to World Urban Forums every 2 years after that. That work has led to an agreement, or in principle, we've got to work out the details of mainstreaming faith within UN Habitat. What that means is we know how this works at UNEP with Faith for Earth. It's the same thing. Faith for Earth is mainstreaming, faith within the United Nations Environment Program with Iyad and his team. And that is an opportunity for us to do that within UN Habitat, mainstreaming faith perspectives, faith values, faith understandings of cities and sustainability and so on and so forth within UN Habitat. And so one of the main goals is to progress that another step further at the UN Habitat Assembly in June. In addition to that, I just want to mention that, Lausanne 4, L4 is going to happen in Seoul next year, 2024. We have a statement called The Gospel and the Future of Cities, a call to action, which has a direct line from Cape Town to the work that we did on the Lausanne, on the Jamaica statement on creation care, to the statement on the gospel and the future of cities. We're looking at revising, looking at that again, revising and updating that at L4. It's just a plan. I've asked to do it. I don't know what's going to happen, but if that happens, we'll be working on this year, convening some conversations so we can turn up at L4 to do that work. Again, an update of the gospel and the future of cities, a call to action. And if you haven't seen that, I'm just going to put that link in there. That link will, in the chat, will direct you to a page which talks about some of the work that we're doing there. So go to that and you can see that statement there. The last two things very quickly, climate vigil songs. This is a piece of work that we did collaboratively leading up to COP27. If I'm keeping my numbers straight, in Glasgow, maybe it was 26. I mentioned it because, this is a resource, and there's other resources there that can get us in our worship, our imaginations tuned to what God is speaking to us as we continue to work towards change. And that helps us to focus, open to the Spirit, open to the Word. And so Climate Vigil Songs is a great resource for us to do things together in worship. So that is there. And the last thing I want to say is, when I was at COP15, which is the biodiversity COP, we had our own pavilion. We had a faith pavilion, and we did talks, programming at our own faith pavilion at COP15. And I had an opportunity to give a report on biodiversity from an evangelical perspective. Now, it was woefully inadequate. I got to admit that. But it got the idea that we should perhaps do an annual end of the year report of what we're doing as a global community in creation care. So I'll be working on with other folks in the WA and other partners to do a global collaborative annual end of year report that can pull all the things that we're doing together in one place, and we can see it. We can understand it. And I think that'd be very helpful. So that's a thing that we're going to be working on this year. And so with that, I'm going to say thanks and turn it on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm representing World Evangelical Alliance, and we now take it to Jasmine Kwong, representing Lausanne movement. So you've all been invited to this virtual forum by the Lausanne WA Creation Care Network, and we've heard from the WA side, and now we are hearing from you, Jasmine, from the Lausanne side. Over to you.
Good evening, everybody from Manila, Philippines. It's great to join you all virtually today. So the first thing that I would like to share is something that I would share both as a creation care advocate with OMF International, as well as a catalyst for creation care in the Lausanne movement. And that is that I'm gratefully part of a new network of mission agencies who've been gathering virtually on a regular basis around the topic of creation care. And we just recently come up with this name for ourselves called Mission Agencies and Creation Care Network, or NAC for short. And we started meeting in early 2002 because there's been growing engagement in creation care as a gospel issue. And we've been recognizing that within different mission agencies, but there's been a bit of a gap in terms of convening some of these groups together to come around this topic and to support one another. So it's been a space to gather, discuss creation care in line with witnessing for Christ and discipling communities of faith in the whole gospel, focusing on integral mission. And so in our agencies, we're focused on caring for creation as part of both our ministries and our lives lifestyles. And within the agencies that are currently part of the network, we're at different stages of the journey, but we are meeting together to provide mutual support to one another, to exchange ideas and stories about what's happening in our respective agencies around creation care. And I think I can speak for those of us who've been meeting that there's been a sense of togetherness on this long and persevering journey. So we're actually continuing to bring more agencies into the network, and the group is still evolving, and we're discerning the way forward. So I invite all of you guys who are here today to pray with us as these agencies continue to deepen our understanding and engagement in this area. So the second thing that I'd like to share is something that Chris started to allude to, and that's related to the 4th Lausanne Congress, which will take place in Seoul in 2024, specifically September 22nd to 28th, 2004 in Seoul, Korea. And this particular 4th Congress will also mark the 50th anniversary of the Lausanne movement. As many of you would know, the 3rd Congress was in Cape Town, South Africa in 2010. First one in Lausanne, the second one was in Manila. And the Cape Town gathering that happened was particularly significant as it produced the Cape Town Commitment, which clearly highlights creation care as a gospel issue under the lordship of Christ. And it also led to the formation of the Lausanne WEA Creation Care Network, or LWCCN. So we see that the opportunity now in preparing for Seoul, which is not very far away, as an opportunity to see creation care feature even more prominently at this 4th Congress. But in addition to the 2024 event, there's also a parallel journey happening called L4. And it's because Lausanne is not only focused on this one-time event, but it's going to be part of a multi-year global and polycentric process called L4. And the objective is to be able to catalyze collaboration of the global church towards discipling the nations and shaping the world in 2050. And of course, we would want to see creation care discipleship as part of that. So just to touch on a third point, but still related to this, is on the topic of collaboration. So there's still quite a long process about creating the program and planning around Seoul 2024 and L4. And so we want everybody that's here today to be part of raising awareness and helping to keep creation care as a gospel issue on the forefront of our leaders and even with the Lausanne planning team. So if you have contact with any of the Lausanne leaders in your country or region, please help to keep creation, climate, biodiversity issues high on their agendas. We want to find ways to be able to support one another and collaborate towards L4 across organizations and of course around global church. So again, I invite you to pray with us for growing and deepening our reflection and engagement of the care of creation in the gospel, in the global church and in mission. And of course, please stay tuned for updates with the monthly pollinator newsletter that was on LWCCN puts out. So if you need to follow up with me about what I've shared, or if you have suggestions about some of the possible ways forward, please contact me at my email there, and we will try to direct your comments and queries accordingly. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasmine. And if you have any questions or also want to comment on anything that was shared, please use the chat. And by the way, it's also not forbidden to say, yay, Chris, or go for it, Jasmine. You're doing a great job. So I want to applaud James Kisenge, who's done exactly that just a moment ago. We are a creation care community around the world, and we also want to bless and support and strengthen ourselves, don't we? We will now go on and listen to Dave. Dave is with the Rocha International. I think all of you more or less know him. Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Matthias. And thanks so much, Jasmine, for what you just shared. Some of you will know that I wear more than one hat because I need to. But one that I wear is I'm the other Lausanne catalyst alongside Jasmine. And so I'd reiterate what Jasmine said there, particularly if you have any links at all with the Lausanne movement in the countries or regions where you are, use whatever resources you have to try and persuade them to lobby for creation care to be central to the agenda in Seoul 2024, because that process is how that's going to happen. It's going to happen through the countries and through the regions. Some of you will also have known Ed Brown, who of course was the first Lausanne Creation Care Catalyst, but came to the end of his tenure at the end of last year. So Ed has stepped down as Catalyst, so it's now Jasmine and I heading that forwards. But we sort of divided things up so Jasmine could largely speak about the Lausanne stuff, and I would speak more about Rocha's work. So if we could have the next slide. I want to begin by talking a bit about COP15, which Chris Elisara mentioned. This is another COP process, another conference of the parties under the United Nations, but this one is on biodiversity. As the number suggests, it's the 15th, and Rocha has been involved in these over many, many years. And for many years, we were the only Christian organization involved at all in the biodiversity COPs. It was really encouraging to see lots of others there in Montreal for this one as well in December. And we had a very diverse Rocha group from Peru and India and Ghana and Canada and Switzerland, amongst other countries, taking part in our delegation there. There is a very detailed analysis of the conclusions of COP15 and its implications on the Rocha website, and the link is there, and that will go on the recording as well. But basically, the global framework that was agreed has committed all the countries involved, and these are governments who are the main partners in the COP, to protect 30% of the Earth's land and water surface for biodiversity within the next 10 years, to find another $200 billion extra finance for biodiversity conservation, and also to take out $500 billion of work which was really undermining biodiversity. And there's lots else in there as well. It's a really good agreement, but it has come without teeth. And our real job going forwards from COP15 is to ensure that the countries that have signed up to this actually carry it forwards. And a bit like the climate COP in Egypt, there's a lack of clear timelines, a lack of exactly who's going to provide the finance, particularly in terms of flowing from the richer countries to the global south, and a lack of accountability. So although it's a really good framework, there's a long way to go to make sure that that's implemented. Now, I notice on this call, Samuel Chu from Canada is here, from Rocha International and Rocha Canada. He's written a detailed 5-part blog on COP15 and on COP27, and there's also a blog on the Rocha Canada website. So there's lots more if you want to follow up about COP15. But let's move on to the next slide if we can. Many of you will know of Rocha and know we've been doing this sort of stuff for quite a long time. And this year we have a rather special anniversary in that the Rocha family turns 40 this year. It's 40 years since the first Rocha project in Portugal was established. And to celebrate that, we'll be having a number of events through this year. Do watch our website. And if you don't already get our e-news, do sign up for that. One of the things we're doing is producing some short films. The first of which is called I Am a Conservationist. And you can see our current executive director, Simon Stewart, on the slide here. And the whole point of the video is to say we have this stereotype of what a conservationist looks like, and Simon fits the bill perfectly. But as you go through the video, you'll see there are an awful lot of very diverse and different people from all kinds of backgrounds, ages, and countries talking about how they are conservationists. This is something for everyone. I also really commend the Field Notes podcast, which Rocha produces. There's a great back catalogue, and the new series has just started. They're co-presented now, the new series, by Rachel Manda from the UK and Rick Fore from Canada. And these are really good interviews with fascinating people about their commitment to God's creation. And it's worth listening to the whole back catalogue if you're a podcast person. There's some really good stuff in there. But that new series has just started. I really do commend that. And as part of Rocha turning 40, we've also had a kind of revamp of our whole global movement. We have a new global covenant that binds together the 20 countries where Rocha is a nationally established organization. and gives us a new mutual responsibility with a new commitment to creation care, which is not yet up on our website, but will be very soon. It's a really good document. And then this slide talks about something else that's just been launched within the last few months and is growing very fast, and that's the Friends of a Rocha network. And this is particularly aimed at countries where a Rocha does not yet have a national presence, but where there are groups that want to be associated with what we're doing, that are caring for creation in practical ways. Some of those groups may be on a journey towards becoming a Rocha organization. Others never will be. They're part of something else, but they're doing practical work. And as you can see from this map, we already have 13 Friends of a Rocha organizations in 10 countries around the world. And there's a waiting list in the dozens of others who are being assessed and discussed. So this is growing really fast. It's a great way of, if you're in a country where nothing much is going on, but you want to be associated with Christians caring for creation practically, I commend the Friends of a Rocha network to you. And then the final slide, which I think I'm stealing a tiny bit of thunder from Rachel Mash, because both of us are involved in this. But Season of Creation is something from the global church and for the global church. It's put together by the Catholics, the Orthodox, the Evangelicals, the Anglicans, the Lutherans, and everybody. And it's from the 1st of September to the 5th of October each year, great resources under a commonly agreed theme. And the theme for this year is Let Justice and Peace Flow, with the symbol from Amos, that verse in Amos, of a mighty stream of justice and peace flowing. So there'll be all kinds of resources there up online. Do just have a look for Season of Creation and you'll find those. And I think I've had my time. So Matthias, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Rachel, are you a conservationist? Well, maybe, but I definitely know you're a Green Anglican, so over to you.
Thank you so much, Matthias, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I'm Rachel. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa, and I am indeed a Green Anglican. Could we go on to the first slide? So all the work that we do in Church Anglican community is based on the 5th mark of mission, which says, let us strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. So I think the first part of that, we have to recognize that the integrity of creation is broken down. And so we have to lament, we have to confess what we have done, and we have to strive to maintain it. And then the second part is renewing the life of the earth, being involved in ecosystem restoration, in tree planting, in restoring what has been destroyed. So move on to the next one. As Dave says, yeah, for us within the Green Anglicans movement, I must say that one of the key things has been being involved in Season of Creation, because it gives you a whole month during the year when you can really focus on creation. Like, many people have never even heard a sermon on creation. And as we come together as a global ecumenical community, I think this month of really focusing on creation has become very important. And the symbol for this year is these rivers coming together. And I really believe that what we're seeing today, this afternoon, is the different streams, different rivers coming together. For too long, we have been separated. And it's only as we come together that we will really begin to have the power to make the significant changes that are needed. So we can move to the next one. So one of the resources I wanted to share with you, which we've worked on with quite a few of the people who are in this meeting today, is a resource called Preaching for God's Word. So these are weekly sermon notes on care for creation from different writers from around the world. It's based on the Revised Common Lectionary. And this is a resource that we would like to share with you. And also, if you know of people, or perhaps you are interested to assist with sermon notes, you can be in contact with me or with Dave. Next one. So I'm particularly involved in the UNEP process and the Global Plastic Treaty. And I do want to say that within the UNEP process, more than the COPs, I would say the UNFCCC, there is a great space for faith communities. We are part of the NGOs or the youth, what they call the multi-stakeholders. And Dr. Iad, who's in charge of the United Nations Environmental Program, Faith for Earth, is a mover. He really makes things happen. And if you want to get involved in the United Nations Environmental Assembly, United Nations Environmental Program, do please get in contact with Faith for Earth. They are registering more and more faith communities. A large percentage now of the nonprofit organizations who are involved with UNEP are coming from a faith background. And there's lots of side events. There's lots of opportunities to be involved in different task teams. I'm personally involved in the pollution plastic task team. Just this afternoon at one of the meetings, somebody was sharing that at the last meeting of the INC, that very long name that was mentioned, the South African and Kenya delegates, they formed what is called the Friends of the Waste Pickers. And I think that's very significant because the faith communities are the ones that are bringing in the call to support waste pickers in this global plastic treaty. Next one. And then one of the exciting things for us is in Glasgow, in COP26 in Glasgow, some of the young faith activists got together and they said, what could we do if we came together from our different denominations? How much difference could we make? And they have formed this movement called the Climate Youth Ecumenical Summit, Climate Yes, supported by Tearfund, Renew Our World, and other people. And last year we had hubs of young people in Nairobi, Lilongwe, Johannesburg, and Milan. And once you put the young people in the same room, the energy just really grows and flares. And that's been very exciting. And to see how that will grow and continue to grow. So if you are a young climate activist and you want to get involved, do please reach out. You can follow on social media or contact us and we'll put you in contact with other people in your area. Next one. So before we hand over to Nicholas, I think for all of us, one of the very important things is that this year must be the year in whatever we do with our campaigning is to say no to new fossil fuel projects. We do not have any capacity on this globe to cope with more fossil fuel projects. So let us be out there. Let us be stopping the mines from being built. Let us stop the new oil projects. And let us really come out in solidarity with other people and say no to any new fossil fuel projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Actually, before we go to Nicholas and continue with the Anglicans, Rachel, you have shared about young climate activists, and it's a great joy and honor and privilege to have Vanessa Nakate with us. I've just seen you join. And Vanessa, I know that you have to jump in just a couple of minutes, but why don't you share from your perspective? We are very keen to hear from you and also share your insights from the recent climate protests you have been supporting from Uganda, for example, also the protests against the coal mining in Germany, in Elisara. So Vanessa, if you can hear us and unmute yourself, then we'd love to bring you in at this point before we move on with our planned program.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me.
Yes, we can.
I can't see myself. Hello. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm so happy to be on this call. I got an invitation from Lydia today morning, and I got to meet Lydia at COP27 with other activists who are part of a Christian activist group. And it's really an honor for me to learn from the different men and women of God and activists in this place, because for so long as an activist, I've been trying to see and read and understand the Christian perspective in our fight for climate justice. And of course, looking for resources to help me learn and understand that. And Yeah, I'm so just glad to really be on this call. There is a short writing that I shared recently, and it was talking about how Jesus fed 5,000 men without including women and children. And what really struck in that scripture for me was that when there was left over from the food, he asked the disciples to collect that because it didn't want any of it to be lost or wasted. And that really opened my eyes to something so powerful, because in our fight for climate justice, we've been talking about loss and damage and how the climate crisis is really causing loss and damage in so many communities. And then this scripture is talking about loss and wastage, and it almost, shows exactly what our fight is, that God is not a God who wills for anyone to perish. He's not a God who wills for our planet to be destroyed. He's not a God who wills for creation and ecosystems to be lost. And I'm just really loving how God has been speaking to me about the environment and about creation. And there's also, I've been asked questions many times about how, God says we should have dominion, but for me, dominion doesn't mean exploitation. I think dominion there means service towards creation, service towards the people, service towards the planet. But then this is something that, we need everyone to understand. And as I was, after COP27 having the Loss and Damage Fund established, I was praying and just asking, what is our message? What should we do as we head into 2023? And I just felt it in my heart and in my spirit, the need for people to understand that Christians are not against environmental protection, because this is mandate and a responsibility directly from God. And this year, I would really love to connect with different faith groups and activists across the world to help people understand that our fight for climate justice it's not just us fighting for protection of the earth and people. It is God working through us to ensure that the earth is protected and the people is protected. He says that the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but he came that we may have life and have this life in abundance. And when we look at what the climate crisis is doing to communities, for example, in the Horn of Africa, where there is, a drought that has left millions of people struggling to find food, struggling to find water and health facilities, that does not equal to an abundance of life. Those are people suffering, people that need help, people that need support because they're really being affected by the climate crisis. And it's our responsibility to reveal God in this crisis, to reveal the heart of God, which seeks to redeem, which seeks to restore, which seeks to help people that are suffering right now. And we continue to say no new fossil fuels, that is for coal, oil, and gas. If we want to limit global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and also, we need to continue holding leaders accountable and telling them not to miss the Kairos moment that we have to tackle the climate crisis. Kairos is referred to as spiritual time as well, because the earth is way more spiritual than it is physical. It has an understanding, it has an intellect, it is sacred, and it's really our responsibility, all of us, to ensure that creation is restored, and people are protected. It does groan for the manifestation of the sons of God. And when it says sons, it means sons and daughters as well. So we all need to rise up, because creation groans, and as children of God, we need to rise up and speak up and show the heart of God in our fight for climate justice, because he wills that no one perishes, and he wills that our home doesn't perish. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak that I didn't expect I would get, but God bless you all. And yeah, please, I really want to do more work with our faith groups this year. Please include me. I will send my email as well. But yeah, I really want the world to see the heart of Christ in our fight for climate justice. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Vanessa, for blessing us with your presence and with what you've just shared. It's amazing to see what you do and how you do it, spiritually, prayerfully, in all those big global climate activists moments. Do you mind if two people who have just volunteered pray for you, Hillary and Davis? Thanks for volunteering. Thanks for keeping it short and powerful. And let's pray for Vanessa, everybody. Hillary and then Davis.
Heavenly Father, thank you for Vanessa and how you have spoken to her and how you have equipped her to be in the spot where you want to use her to mobilize, to catalyze groups to come together across the world. Please encourage her, give her support so that she can carry on when times are difficult, when it seems like there's no response. But we pray that you would give her the words to share so powerfully as she did today about the how, God, you want to work through us to protect not just the planet, but the people, and to bring an abundance, not just, oh, we're going to save it from bad things, but God, you want to bring abundance into our lives, into our relationships with you, with others, with creation, with ourselves. And so we just pray that as she works both in what she says and how she says it, you will reveal your heart through her to restore all things. Thank you for her, and bless her and others who are working tirelessly behind the scenes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Father in heaven, we thank you for Vanessa. We thank you for everyone that is on this platform. We thank you for you have gathered us here for a divine reason and divine purpose. We thank you for Vanessa, and I thank you that your word has equipped her with all that strength and effort that she needs to accomplish what you want to see in the climate spaces. And also we thank you that you're raising more younger people who are pushing the role of faith in the climate spaces. And we believe that as we push on for climate justice, that the faith will be evident, the hope will be evident, and the love of God will be evident. All communities that are being affected by the climate injustices. In Jesus' name we believe and pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Davis. Thanks, Vanessa. So agenda and program is one thing. Kingdom relations is another thing. And this is so good to be together and also to react on some of the amazing things that are happening in our community. Thanks for wanting to be also in touch, Vanessa, during this year. I think that can be picked up at many points here with all the partners we have convened here. So now, Nicholas, over to you. We want to continue to hear from the Anglicans, and you're with the Anglican Alliance, and I'm going to bring up the slides in a second.
Thank you so much, Matthias. And thank you so much, Vanessa, for those very inspirational words. Very glad that we're in this space also to share as people of faith. And Vanessa is part of a group, Climate, yes, that Rachel Marsh had just mentioned. So Rachel Marsh, because she's speaking from the Anglican perspective, has mentioned some of the things, but I'll just briefly mention a very particular initiative from the Anglican Communion that we launched recently from last year. So if I could just have the slides with this. Yeah, so last year, there was a gathering of Anglican bishops, what we call the Lambeth Conference. This is a decade kind of gathering of Anglican bishops, and it's there that we've got the leadership of the Anglican Communion reflect on different issues that is affecting our society and put them forward in prayer and again in action. And one of the legacies of this 15th Lambeth Conference was the Communion Forest, which is an initiative that the Anglican Communion is rallying its family and the larger faith groups, the larger faith community to care for creation through ecosystem protection, ecosystem restoration. And it stems from the Anglican Mark of Mission, 5th Mark of Mission. That should be in the second slide, Matthias. So the Anglican 5th Mark of Mission, again, has been mentioned by Reverend Marsh, is striving to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustaining and renewing the life of the earth. And as a church, we are so committed to this mark of mission, or this mission, looking at creation, as Vanessa has quite clearly articulated, a biblical mandate to us to steward creation, that we are here not just to exploit nature, but to steward it. And so the Lambeth Conference, the bishops came together and said that beyond what we've been doing already, let's steward creation through ecosystem protection and restoration. So the Communion Forest is focused on that. Of course, as the Anglican family, we are involved in many creation care activities, but the Communion Forest is particularly on forest protection, tree growing, and ecosystem restoration. And this is by provinces in the Anglican Church. Provinces is a demarcation we use for I don't know how to explain it because it's so varied. But we've got dioceses and provinces. Sometimes they can be national, sometimes a province can be multinational because you can have different countries forming a province, just based on the population of the Anglicans in those regions. So we are looking at individual churches, we're looking at dioceses, we're looking at national churches or provinces, rallying their membership into ecosystem protection, ecosystem restoration. And these three words, or these three sentences we use, to plant is to hope. So looking into the future, into the hope we have when we plant. And this means that we are looking at growing new things, things that have not existed before, us growing, taking trees and foresting deserts or ecosystems that have lacked that. To restore is to heal, because today we are discussing creation care in a context of degradation. So the environmental degradation that we've experienced means that most of the creation care activities at the moment are actually restorative, because you're trying to restore degraded ecosystems. So be they tropical forest we're talking about, or the mangrove forest, or different ecosystems. So that is what we are committing to also in this initiative. And to protect is to love. We also know that there are a lot of ecosystems that are under threat. And so in this initiative, we're also looking at protecting these ecosystems, the forests that are at the moment facing a lot of trafficking in wood and in different things that are happening that are exploiting these ecosystems. So this initiative is meant to restore, to protect our system through doing new things, restoring that which has been lost or been degraded, protecting that which is there and is under threat. In the next slide is just how we see this happening. And first is the practical actions. And so this means churches having initiatives and doing this, tree growing. And this is already happening largely. My run church, the Anglican Church of Kenya, is growing trees in different occasions, but we have also adopted forests like here in Nairobi, some outside Nairobi, we're just planting, growing trees in those forests. The church in Philippines is involved in mangrove forest growing in the coastal streams and ecosystems of the islands there, and many things happening across the communion. The spiritual is really what we've been talking about, and especially when we were also involved in the writing about or responding to the GBF of COP15, looking at how do the world look at nature. And I think the spiritual aspect of this initiative is to see that we weave into we weave creation care activities into the spiritual and liturgical life of the church, helping people to better connect with the faith and with the natural world, so that the faith is not separated from the natural world. We see nature to be sacred. We see every other thing around us to be sacred, to us being part of nature. So we look at the connection of humans and nature itself, not as just people who are out of the nature and exploiting it. So the Anglican Communion is committed to help its members to weave creation care into their own spirituality and the liturgical life of the church. And lastly is connection. Connection is within, of course, the Anglican Communion, but also largely ecumenical, like what we are having here this afternoon. That we just want to share what is happening and what is working well in different contexts, so that it can inspire action in other parts of the world, so people can see that as people of faith, we are doing this and it is possible. And of course, maybe not put there as other aspects, but also we are heavily involved with the advocacy. And we've been following and part of the UNFCCC processes, both in COP26 and COP27, where we are committed to always send bishop. In our delegation, we've had a bishop, we've got a representative of the young people, we've got a representative of the people from the indigenous community, just bringing the perspectives, both faith and also representing those different groups. Also in UNCBD, we have also been part of those processes, giving the perspective, the faith perspective in nature restoration, in biodiversity conservation. And also, as Reverend Marsh mentioned, we are also in the UNEA processes, where we're following on the plastic conversation at the moment, and she's representing us there. So in all this, reflecting on our spirituality, doing practical things to act or to care for creation, but also being involved in the advocacy for creation, protection, and restoration. Thank you. Yeah, maybe I didn't mention, but you can find us on social media, Communion Forest. If you are on Twitter, you'll find us in Instagram and Facebook, and also our website. So there you can sign up and you'll get our newsletters and communication from the initiative.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for presenting this wonderful, inspiring project. That's really fascinating. We are looking forward to hearing many good news from that project and that initiative. We will now continue with Kuki Rokhum and hear from India and perspectives within India and from India to the world. Kuki, over to you.
Thank you so much, Matthias. And yeah, it's always a privilege to be on this platform sharing with you. And I feel it's a great privilege because all the other organizations I see are global or international organizations. And here we have been invited as an Indian organization called the Evangelical Fellowship of India Commission on Relief to share what we are doing in terms of creation care, our initiatives, and also to share the trends and issues that are affecting us. So we will be speaking from our very, our own country perspective, and I will be joined by my colleague, Joylyn Niruba, who will also be sharing some of what we are doing and intend to do. So in terms of the trends and issues, I think extreme weather events will continue, unfortunately. I'm just showing a clipping of things that happened in 2022. We had heat waves, drought-like situations, and in a very short span of time, we also had lots of flooding in different parts of the country. All of this happened in quick succession. And so therefore, that was a stark reminder to us, a big warning that extreme weather events are happening. They will continue to happen. And unfortunately, we know that that is what we will continue to see in the next year as well. And so for us as an organization, for us and the people that we're working with, our job, or what we intend to do, is to brace ourselves to respond and to prepare the community to face such extreme weather events. And then we also work with the government.
Yeah, so working with communities at the ground level for the past 55 plus years, we have observed that it's very important to work with the governments, and also the government is very keen on working with us in issues of climate change across our projects. So last year, we worked with the government in bringing out this booklet called the District Climate Resilience Plan. So what is this plan about is we got the community together to hear from them, to listen to their challenges and what are the trends, the patterns, what are in the weather that they're facing, and what they would like to do about it. How can they be part of changes as far as climate change is concerned? So just bringing their voices together and coming up with a plan to build their resilience to climate change. So we worked on that with our partners like UNICEF and Climate Action Network South Asia. So this has been very successful in some of the districts of central India. Last year, we worked this plan in 3 districts, drought-affected districts of India, central India, and it has been shared with the government at the district level. So we hope to continue to do that in other districts as well in this year, 2023. And also we will continue to be present again at COP this year to represent the voices that we serve. And we are there at the grassroots, just seeing how it's impacting the communities. Those who contribute least are the ones who are worst affected. So just being their voices. So we will engage at the international level in COP. So last year, we have a picture of our executive director who was able to meet some of the Indian delegation and other stakeholders there. Some good things have come out of it. We were able to meet the environment minister who was very interested to work on the district climate resilience plan in other districts as well in India. So hopefully this year we would continue to work and come up with these district resilience plans across our projects, where we will work with the communities and hear from them, and also share with the government. So this will continue this year. This is our work with the government.
Our next engagement has been at the local level with churches and small groups, which has resulted in many small actions. And we strongly believe in EFICOR that the small actions that we do can make a big impact. And so we will continue our engagement with local churches and organizations. And we plan to continue to do that as much as possible with things like Environment Sunday in local languages, apart from English, working with local churches, local organizations, so that they do plantation drives, or even the promotion of what is called farmer-managed natural regeneration. And, little children exciting young people within the church, like these kids that you see in this photograph, just giving them a vision for what God has planned for his creation and what our role is in the destruction of it and also in the taking care of it. And many of the people that we work with live in cities, and yet they have made whatever possible, done whatever possible to bring changes wherever they live. And so we believe that this is very small, maybe compared to the big things that we talk about, the big things that we bring at the international platforms, but all these small initiatives can make a change. And we also strongly believe that, we can drive people to act out of fear, the fear of a disaster, the fear of extreme weather events, the fear of what might happen in the future. That fear is usually short-lived. And we know that through experience, because a community that is affected by disaster, once it is over, they forget it. The disaster may happen again, but memory is short-lived. But the biggest motivation can come from faith. And so we strongly believe also that if you motivate someone and convince them through their faith, then that is sustainable action that will last forever because they strongly believe in it. And so that is what we try to do with the local churches that we work with. And so we're very happy, if you are in the region, if you're working in the region, we're very happy to partner with you to do workshops with churches, with young people, children, youth, or Bible colleges or seminaries or whatever it is. We are wanting to partner with people in the region so that we can bring that faith change at the heart level, so that the mind changes and action is influenced by that attitude and heart change. And so that is what we want to continue to do. And we'd invite anybody from this region to get in touch with us, to come alongside us so that we can journey in this together as we continue to be the voice of the community, as we continue to liaise with the government and other important networks and agencies, and also most importantly, with the church here in India and across the world, so that we can bring that change. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kuki. And that's exactly how we know you and love you. Always inspiring, always motivating others to give their all. Thank you. We are now traveling from India to Kenya, and we'll listen to Joe Bonga. And I can already give you a sneak preview. If there was a competition for the best slide in this virtual forum, Joe's first slide would be definitely among the first three. Over to you, Joe Bonga.
Thank you so much, Matthias. A lot of greetings. I'm very encouraged just to hear what we're all doing together in different parts of the world. And I just want to say thank you once again to everyone. I'm always very much inspired by the work of God, that even in the writing of the Holy Scriptures, he started with creation and ends with creation. I mean, in the beginning, he created. And if we look at Revelation, he's talking about, then behold, a new earth and a new heaven. So I think in between is what we do to make sure that our life in this creation is better, and as we wait for the next one. And so what we've been doing is working with the churches and faith-based communities. And one thing that we really appreciate is that the work that we've done with the churches in Africa has always got the attention of other bodies like the UN, the UNESCO, and even the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Environment. And so we decided to come up with strategies that can make it easy for government and other agencies that want to work in Africa on climate action without necessarily feeling like they are coming in a bias. So we decided to come up with various strategies. Recently, we have developed a plan with UNESCO to see how we can ensure that learning institutions become part and parcel of climate action. And I'm saying this considering the demographics in Africa. Out of the 1.8 billion people in Africa today, 41% are below 15 years old. And about 60% are below 25. So that means that the biggest percentage, the highest percentage of Africans are spending time in learning institutions. most of the learning institutions in Africa are boarding schools. So that means that even in our work with the churches, we only have about 3 months in a year with the young people in our local congregations, and then they spend the rest of the 9 months in the learning institutions. So these has made us become very keen and aware of how do we engage young people, not only in faith, but also to mobilize them in acts of creation care. So recently we came up with just a team of young people, young networks and organizations, and we wanted to come up with the African climate areas. And this is just to help us also to see how we are able to implement the youth strategy for Africa by the United Nations. And just the United Nations and the UN bodies have done a lot of good stuff in terms of starting these conversations, but the church has been left behind because I think there hasn't been any clear capacity building on the church on what these articles means. For example, the Rio Declaration, the Johannesburg Plan of Action, the Marrakech, and all these discussions that we are having even right now, the green economy reports, the church has been left behind in terms of nobody is able to break them down into what they mean for a Christian, how Christians' action contribute to these global discussions. And I think that is one of the gaps that we want to fill by making sure that the church is able to understand what these discussions mean, and the church is able to take actions on what these actions, the discussions entail, and more so even to create strong advocacy and campaigns within the generations that we are having today in Africa. And one of the things I like about the quote with UNICEF is that it says here, without action now, climate change will just continue to exacerbate the inequalities that children already face and the future generations. And so looking at 650 million in Africa currently being under 17, this becomes a very, 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 very important segment of our population that must be brought to a forefront. So next slide, what we are trying to do with this is trying to make sure that young people are able to adopt activities and engagements that are able to make them actors of climate action now. We want to be able to do a lot of the talk in the conference and boardrooms, but we also want to link that with action at the local level so that we are not leaving the young people behind. Young people and children have been marginalized, especially, and it's very easy to marginalize them because we are talking about what we understand, what we want to do, where we want the world to be at. And if somebody doesn't help them to design their own campaigns and advocacy materials and resources, then they feel helpless. They know they need to do something about creation care, but they don't know how they can come in. And so this is the gap that we're also trying to fill. We're trying to bridge the nexus between the boardroom discussions and the global bodies discussing and what is going on the ground. And my final slide, I think, how we intend to do this. We are looking into how do we make sure that young people in Africa who are struggling to, to put food on the table and are able to engage themselves in climate, in food and farming activities that do not necessarily affect the environment. We realize that most of the activities that we do, like there's a lot of talking going on, but nobody is building the capacity of members of our continent to be able to produce food in a way that does not harm the environment and also take care of the oceans and stuff like that. And one thing that the governments in Africa have asked us to do is to help them build the education for sustainable development, which looks into the head, the heart, and the hands. And one of the areas that we're bringing the church closely is to be able to talk about these values, talk about these attitudes, create an agency for young people to be a great movement that can bring impact, not only in the local areas, but also with the values. Because what I see in Africa with environmental degradation and climate action, it's more of a heart issue than anything else. People need that transformation from within, so that every action that they do outside there in their local communities can make so much meaning and relevance for them. And we also intend that as we do this, we are able to celebrate those who are really doing great initiatives. And like Lennox is here, is one of the young people that we've has come up with great ideas that we've tried to accelerate. And this is in line with the United Nations Youth Strategy, United Nations, I think the Environmental Youth Strategy on sustainability for social, economic, and empowerment. And so what we are trying to do is we are trying to get young people who are able to come up with innovative ideas that can help us do a lot of climate action. And what we intend to do is celebrate them and award them and just make sure that they're able to amplify some of these actions within their local community context. And what we need to, maybe what we are asking you as we discuss in those global level is to be able to identify some of these young people that are doing great things and bringing contributions to the discussions that we are having. And we're looking forward for the SDGs Summit just to see what's going on and just report also on what the faith communities are doing as we work with local churches to towards the acceleration and realization of sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Joel, for these insights and everything you do with Africa for SDGs. That's really, really inspiring. And it's a great movement across the continent. You are in how many countries? Over 30 countries.
Yeah, over 30. Yeah.
Over 30 countries. That is really, really great to see. Our final speaker is Ben, and Ben is with Renew Our World campaign and will take us into campaigning mode, I guess, for 2023. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Matthias, and thanks, everyone. So Renew Our World is a coalition, it's a movement, and most of the other speakers are, in fact, I think all the other speakers are involved in one way or another, and many of you on the call are. So it makes sense that I end up, because everything that we're doing is something that comes out of what the members are doing. So here are the things that strike me as the most important ones to bear in mind as we look at the next year coming up. Global emissions are still rising. We have a very short time left in which it's still possible to limit warming to the reasonably safe level of 1.5 degrees. It's still just possible, but it's getting very difficult. Every year that emissions continue to rise and aren't the year that they start falling makes it harder and harder still. So, as we've already heard, fighting against rising emissions is utterly essential in everything that we do. Stopping new sources of emissions and tackling the ones we've already got. That's vital. And then perhaps a bit more hopefully, climate finance. So there's the old promise we've had for years that rich countries will transfer $100 billion a year of climate finance to poor countries. They've been promising that since 2009. They've done some of it. They haven't done all of it yet. We need to fight for that missing part. And at COP last year, the thing that gave me the most hope from that COP was, as well as that voluntary 100 billion, there was a surprising agreement for something that looks a bit more like compensation, that rich countries that cause the damage will pay money to poorer countries on the front lines of climate change for the loss and damage that they're feeling that they didn't cause and that you can't adapt your way out of, and it's too late to mitigate. It's very good news we got the agreement to get that fund, but all we got was the agreement. And as Dave was saying about the biodiversity COP, there's a lot of pressure we need to put on and a lot of prayers we need to pray to make sure they actually get delivered. And a lot of that will come, I hope, at next year's COP in Dubai and in the lobbying in the run up to that. I wanted to quote this verse to you. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, from Romans 12. And we need to remember the reality that we're in. We need to remember that this is God's world, that he's called us to act, and keep that hope that together, doing what we can and combined by him, we can hope that we have the impact we need to have. And if we keep on looking at the evidence and the damage, that's harder to do. But as Kuki and many others have reminded us, if we look at God, and if we are encouraged also by looking at each other, that will encourage us to take the actions that we need to and to keep going. Next slide, please. So here are the main 3 priorities for Renew Our World, the things we're going to do together this year. The next COP in Dubai, not just the 2 weeks themselves in December, but the process of lobbying our governments and anybody else we can get to listen beforehand is crucial. And we will be providing a toolkit to help people do that in their own countries. Renew Our World operates in 21 countries, and we'd love to add more. And I'll put my email in the chat. Do contact me or contact anyone else who's involved if you're interested in finding out more and maybe joining up and bringing us our 22nd country. That would be great. It would be a good year to do it. The second thing is stepping back a bit, is reading the signs of the times. We are producing a booklet to explain the climate and nature crises for local church leaders. And we're especially thinking about local church leaders who haven't had a huge amount of theological education. Dave Bookless has written the first draft of that booklet. We're going to add other voices to it, and hopefully it will be a short, accessible and very useful resource for church leaders in many countries. We've not come across anything else that does that job. We think there's a big gap we could fill to equip the church well everywhere. And the third priority is the Global Plastics Treaty. This great opportunity we have for a plastics treaty with teeth, something that really does change the situation where we're treating the world as a rubbish tip, as the Pope put it. This is a really good opportunity. Over the next 2 years, those negotiations will happen. The Rubbish Campaign launches on the 1st of March with Tearfund and others involved. And others, some countries it's launching then, other countries the launch happens at a time that suits them through the year, which is the way Renew Our World works. When will the booklet be ready, roughly? We don't know yet. I'm working on the schedule. In the second half of the year is what I'm going to say now. Renew Our World is not in Zimbabwe yet. We'd love it to be, though. And on that note, I'll stop. Back to you, Matthias.
Well, thank you very much, Ben, and thank you to all our speakers and contributors today in this virtual forum. It's great to hear both the global initiatives and campaigns and events that are going on where people can link into, can pray for, and can practically support. It's also great to hear those more local stories and initiatives that can inspire us to do something similar in a different part of the world and in a similar mode. So thank you, everybody. We have only a couple of minutes left, which gives us time for 2 1-minute interventions from the floor. So if there are people who would like to quickly and very precisely and briefly share something, please raise your hand and we can bring you into the discussion if there is a point that you think should be added. Now's the time. Yes, Peter, thank you for being with us. Peter.
Thank you. I wonder, I know many organizations are going to the United Arab Emirates for the COP in November, December. And I know that for smaller NGOs, it's very difficult to have accreditation. Would it be possible? And I would also think that there are organizations not filling their slots. Somehow, if there could be a system or a way to cooperate, or where small organizations could have access to participate. If larger organizations are not using the places they can have.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's a very valuable point. I would say we take that up in the Lausanne WA Creation Care network calls. We are somehow sort of representing many partners, some of which are accredited to the climate COP process, and time and again have a couple of tickets left. So I think, yes, we can come up with a model there. Thank you for that. important point. We do have time for a second tiny intervention. Who wants to rise to that opportunity? If that's not the case, everything is said, but not by everybody. But it's a good point to end. So let me thank all of you who contributed today, who participated today, who spent their time in this virtual forum. We are indeed a global community of creation care practitioners. We are passionate about this, and let's go into our work in 2023 prayerfully, and by also knowing that we are not alone. We are strengthened by being together. And one way of how you can also explore that deeper in this year is something which is called the EFICOR network, which is a mentoring system in a sense, or mentoring and coaching system where you are put into smaller groups and you meet over the course of several months. So we will send the link to the next edition of the EFICOR network in the follow-up email to this virtual forum. So if that's something you want to explore, then you are warmly invited to that. So my last question to the whole forum is if we find somebody who would pray with us as we close, and I'm happy to accept volunteers.
Matthias, I'll do it.
Thank you, Joel.
Creator God, we give you thanks that we have the time, the technology, and the means to be together from across your world together today to talk about plans that we feel are part of the unfolding mission of you in your world. And pray for your creation. We pray that you continue to give us the strength and encouragement to be stewards and good stewards of your creation, that we can be prophets of the good world and good creation you have created to all those around us. Through us, your desire for a renewed earth may be heard. And that despite the challenges that we face across the world, we are encouraged by hearing what we are all doing in your work in this world. Send us out today and throughout this year as it unfolds for us to continue in this, to continue encouraging, inspiring, and co-creating with you a renewed earth for your sake and for your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everybody. And please also note that Deborah Hancock is sending her greetings, Global Director of MICA Global. She couldn't make it to today's virtual forum, but as you all know, because some of you are part of the MICA Global network, MICA Global is also a very crucial player in this and a very esteemed partner. So many thanks, and have a great rest of your day or night or morning or afternoon. Thank you. Blessings. Bye-bye.